Hello, everyone, and welcome to Awakening Spiritual Intelligence. Today's theme is compassion. I'm Pauline. I'll be your tech host, and I will hand it over now to Dr. Yosi Amram, who is our host for today.
Thank you, Pauline. And thank you all for being here. So good morning, good afternoon, good day, good week, good life. I don't know what time zone and where you are, but I'm just hopefully covering it all with the good life. Kidding aside, as Pauline said, today's class is on compassion, which I think is such a critical and foundational element in awakening and living spiritually intelligently. So thank you all for joining me and displaying some of your passion for compassion. So let's just take a moment, type in where you're connecting from and a few words about your current state of being. And particularly take note of your chest and heart and how it feels in this moment: open, closed, tight, spacious, luminous, dark, whatever it is. You can just notice it. If you care to, you can put it in the chat or not, but at least would love to hear where you're plugged in from. We have Toronto, Canada. And John, you have mentioned Pleasanton. And Kathy, good to see you again. Edmonton, Canada, feeling tight and closed. And maybe the doors open just a crack since you're here. Well, that's wonderful. And Nancy Ann, present and after a walk in the woods. Oh, that's awesome. In North San Francisco, heart is 70% open. Okay, that's great. And I'm here in the Santa Cruz Bay Area. And I would say I'm 60% open, if we're going to go with the percentages. But as I name that, I feel it lightens up, actually. So anyway, unfortunately, I think we're all too familiar that our life and all life of all living beings includes suffering, pain, fear, sickness, and ultimately death. And yeah, I see John a little fearful of the future. Need for compassion, but also for accountability. Yes, how to balance those two is critical. So yeah, we there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, a lot of upheaval. So but I think that is just an undeniable reality of life. It might be particularly pronounced in this moment, but we experience our own suffering and the suffering of others we care about in our family, in our community, or even our pets and plants and so on. So and ultimately, we can experience and care about the pain and destruction of any living being. So it may sound depressing so far with so much suffering around us. But the good news is that there's an antidote to suffering, which is our heart's capacity for compassion. And as I see it, compassion is the miracle alchemical process of converting pain and suffering into an experience of open-hearted feeling of care, connection, and ultimately love. And through compassion, we connect deeply and learn to become tender and loving with ourselves, with our hurt and wounded parts, and with others. So, and I think compassion is the essential ingredient for all loving and caring connections with our families, our friends, our co-workers, whatever it might be. So our heart have this amazing capacity, as if by magic, to transform the painful suffering into heartwarming, soft and tender feelings of connection. And hopefully we'll experience some of that today. Now, the etymology of the word compassion comes from Latin, which means co is to be with, and passion, the suffering. So compassion means is to be with and suffer with. So somehow opening our hearts to care for our own or others' suffering softens our armoring and puts us in touch with the tenderness of our hearts and connects us to our loving essence and that of others. So, in this way, compassion activates two foundational qualities of spiritual intelligence, which is inner and interconnectedness, which inherently feels good. And studies show that practicing compassion calms us by activating our parasympathetic nervous system through our vagus nerve. And as I mentioned, there's so much turmoil and suffering these days, concern about our environment, species disappearing, political polarization, economic uncertainty, economic inequalities, homelessness, loneliness, pandemic, increased rates of anxiety, depression, mental illness, increased suicide rates for young people, wars, etc., etc. Hopefully, I'm not getting you too depressed. The list goes on. So there's no surprise we armor ourselves and close our hearts. Our hearts are naturally open and sensitive to our own and everyone's suffering. But if we can contemplate and take it all in, it might feel like it will be too much. It will break our heart. It'll be too painful. So naturally, to defend against that pain and that fear, our heart then tighten and close to numb the sensitivity to the pain. And while this numbs our sensitivity to the pain, we feel perhaps less of it, it also numbs and closes our heart, which reduces our sensitivity to love and joy. So living with a closed heart may minimize our pain, but it's a tragic one nonetheless because it limits our aliveness. So let's again feel into your hearts now. I've mentioned all these potential sufferings that we experience individually and collectively. And again, notice how open or closed does it feel, opaque or transparent, hard, tight, or tender or soft. Just notice and allow it without trying to change it. So, so just as you notice that, I'm going to, in a moment, guide us all in a meditation that will helpfully help open our hearts. So if you want to, I'm getting myself a little situated here so I can also sit down and okay. So let's begin by finding a comfortable seated position, spine aligned and straight, supporting both our alertness as well as relaxation. Feet flat on the ground, connected to the center core of Mother Earth, and letting our body settle and sink in into the ground, into the earth, into the seat cushion below us. Taking a couple of deep inhales through the nose, exhale through the mouth. And on the exhale, letting go, sinking, dropping it into the body, into the earth, and into the soil below. Feeling the gravitational pull of Mother Earth, the weight of our body. And Mother Earth is always pulling us into her center, like a gentle, loving embrace of a mother, pulling a baby infant into her chest, while also keeping it on the surface. So we have these two opposing forces, the force of gravity pulling us down, and then the pressure through the feet and seat cushion that's keeping us in place. So we can feel these two forces operating on our body. And then this body is made of earth elements, over 70% water, like the surface of the earth, carbon, oxygen, and other minerals that the earth provides for us through the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. So let's take a couple of inhale, drawing in energy and sustenance from the earth, from the soil below, drawing it up through the feet, the legs, the pelvis, up the spine, circulating through the torso and the body. And on the exhale, returning, letting go back down through the pelvis, legs, and feet, letting all the tension, whatever we don't need, the excess right now, compost back into the soil below. So at your own pace, just take a few breaths like that, drawing in energy and sustenance from the earth, up, feet, legs, pelvis, spine, all the way to the crown, top of the head. And then exhale, returning. And letting the spine align, serving as an energetic connection channel between the earth below and the cosmic sky above, connecting through the feet, legs, pelvis, and then the spine, up the torso and the crown, top of the head, pointing at the space above. So sensing into the space above, the vastness of unbounded space, which is estimated to be nearly 100 billion light years and rapidly expanding. This vast unbounded space is estimated to contain 2 trillion galaxies, each with approximately 100 billion stars, each as bright as our sun. So sensing into this vast expanse of boundless space that is dark yet can be luminous with all that starlight, even in the darkness of the night sky. Now, this so-called empty space that is pervaded by starlight is also pervaded by invisible light frequencies like infrared, ultraviolet, gamma rays, X-rays, all of which are parts of what is called the cosmic microwave background radiation. That is the echo of the Big Bang, the moment of creation, that is reverberating throughout the cosmos. So we have this empty space that's permeated by visible starlight and invisible primordial light. Now, this empty space is in fact filled with dark matter and dark energy, which we can't see because those don't interact with light. But we do know that about 28% of the energy mass of the universe is made of dark matter. And approximately 68 to 70% is made of dark energy, which means that all of the matter that we're familiar with, the stars, the planets, etc., only consists of 5% of the energy mass of the cosmos. And the rest is invisible. Yet we know its existence through its gravitational effects. Now, this dark energy that pervades empty space has uniform density throughout space, which is amazing, which means that as the space expands rapidly, as more and more empty space is being created, it is being filled with the same energy density of dark energy, which means there's an ongoing, constant process of creation of new energy entering the universe, the cosmos. So sensing into this energy and light of the space above, let's draw in now some energy and light from the cosmic realm above us, drawing it down through the crown top of the head, bringing it down through the spine, the torso, letting it circulate through the limbs, and exhale, return back to the cosmic realm. So at your own pace, taking a few breaths, drawing in energy and light from the space above, circulating it through the body, returning it to the cosmic realm. Now, this body, I mentioned, is made of earth elements, which in reality are made of stardust, which is, in fact, energy and light that has congealed and cooled down following the Big Bang. It took a while after the Big Bang for the energy to cool down enough so that stable particles, atoms, and molecules could be formed, which is then created the stardust that the earth and the body is made of. Now, what is fascinating also is that each atom and molecule itself, this congealed energy and light, is in fact over 99.9% empty space itself. So this body made of energy, light, and space, much like the cosmic realm above us, So continuing to draw in energy and light from above through the crown top of the head, circulating in the body. And exhale, return back to the heavenly skies. So a couple more breaths at your own pace, like that. And now returning to the earth, the ground below, the solid earth below. And let's again draw in energy and sustenance from the earth, soil below, moving it up, feet, legs, pelvis, torso, and returning back to the soil. Couple more breaths, drawing in from below and returning back down. Now let's include drawing in energy from both directions, from the cosmic realm above and from the earth below. Letting these two streams of energy meet and intermingle throughout the body. Merging them, particularly around the chest and the heart, effectively merging heaven and earth within our hearts, within our chest. And as you continue to draw in energy from above and below, on the exhales, send the energy out forward to the front of your chest. So taking 3 or 4 breaths, drawing in from above and below, exhale forward. Now let's exhale towards the back. Drawing in from above and below simultaneously, meeting at the center of the chest, exhaling towards the back. Now exhaling towards the left. Now exhaling towards the right. Drawing in from above and below, exhaling towards the right. And now continuing to draw in from above and below and exhaling in all 4 directions simultaneously. Now simply breathing normally, resting the awareness, the presence, abiding in the center of the chest, the heart area, feeling it's an expansion on the inhale in all four directions. And sensing into the space in the chest. Noticing if it feels lit up or dark, or perhaps dark with some flickering point or points of light. Does it feel opaque or transparent, tight or open or spacious? Noticing what the emotional state is now and how the nervous system feels. Continuing to abide, dwell in the center of the chest for a few more breaths. And when you're ready, you can let your eyes open and staying rooted and grounded in the center of the chest. You can include the sound of these words, any other sounds, any light that comes into the eyes without going out, just receiving colors, shapes, images. Allowing and receiving. While staying centered and rooted in the center of the chest. And let's take a few moments to share what your state of being and heart feel like now. You can either unmute or type in the chat. Feel more connected to the earth. A little calmer here. Another calm. Well, I think my chest is about 90% open and spacious now. And I feel this almost subtle, blissful quality. Open and spacious, quiet. More creative energy. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier. Okay, more connected to the earth and to my body, receiving whole body breath. That is quite peaceful. Great. So as I mentioned earlier, we need compassion both for ourselves and others that are suffering around us. And yes, more energy, more calming energy that we want to be at. Um, and oh, and I see someone here that says, I don't feel much of anything in my chest area and haven't for a long time. Okay, well, yeah. So I feel my compassion just in reading that. That's in a way sad and a loss. So let's see if in a moment we can bring some compassion to that loss of feeling in the chest and the heart. So yeah, we need compassion for ourselves and others that are suffering, and all too often we associate compassion with the suffering of others. And this is obviously crucially important, but it's not the whole story. So first, what is compassion? We throw that word around a lot. So let's look at some definitions of compassion. First is Oxford Dictionary. Compassion, pity and concern for the suffering and misfortunes of others. So this definition really exclusively focuses on others. Wikipedia says it's a social feeling that motivates people to go out of their way to relieve the physical, mental, or emotional pains of others and themselves. Then it goes back to compassion is sensitivity to the emotional aspects of the suffering of others. So they mentioned oneself, but again, the focus is on others. Now let's look at my definition. And in my definition, it is being present with, open-hearted towards, caring, and motivated to alleviate suffering, both for our own and others. So this is my own synthesis of my experience and different definitions and views on what compassion is, but you could take your pick. Now, a key part of what I'm emphasizing is remaining present, open-hearted towards, caring, and motivated to alleviate suffering. So, sometimes people feel like compassion means, oh, that's terrible, and turn away from what they're witnessing. And that's not compassion, that's disconnection. And when we do it with our own and others' suffering, so true compassion opens our hearts and connects us to ourselves and others, offering our presence and our support. So Ralph Waldo Emerson says that it is one of the most beautiful compensations of this life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself. So this quote highlights that helping others feels good and helps ourselves. Yet this quote, in most definitions, as I mentioned earlier, seems to suggest that we often think of compassion as relating to the suffering of others, but in reality, it also applies to and crucial for self-compassion, which for many of us is harder to practice. All too often, we focus and open our tender hearts to the suffering of others, but fail to do so for ourselves. We judge ourselves and our pain is weak, we're afraid to acknowledge it for fear it would overtake us, or we minimize it, saying, oh, these are first world problems compared to the starving children of in Africa or the victims of war right now. My suffering is nothing. I can't complain or make any kind of a big deal about it. Unfortunately, when we do that, we're disconnecting from ourselves and our spirit essence and the tenderness of our heart, which is, when open and awakened, is sensitive to all suffering, big and small, ours and others. And in fact, we must start with ourselves, for it is hard to be truly compassionate towards others if we're not compassionate and grounded in ourselves, as we'll get depleted and burn out. And at that point, we really can't help others. If you're going to throw a rope to someone drowning, you have to be firmly planted in a safe zone to help them out. So, as the Buddha said, you can search the tenfold universe and not find a single being more worthy of loving kindness and compassion than yourself. So take a moment and just let that sink in. There's nobody more deserving of compassion than ourselves. So self-compassion is crucial and critical for cultivating kindness and love towards ourselves and to counteract the harshness of our inner critic. Besides helping us feel good about ourselves, it also energizes and empowers us to address the problem and the issue at hand. And the first step to self-compassion is to notice our pain, our difficulty, and our suffering, and to be open to feeling it rather than denying, rejecting, or pretending it isn't here. So consider how you would feel someone you love were in pain. Remind yourself that you're on your own side and you could do what soothes you most. I have found it helpful to simply put my right hand flat on my heart with my left hand on top or sometimes on the belly. You can experiment, and taking a few deep breaths, feeling the contact along with the rise and fall of the heart and chest, all the while acknowledging and saying to myself. So I'm speaking to myself in third person here. Yosi, this is a difficult situation. Your knee hurts and you can't as easily do the exercises you love to do. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, life involves these kinds of situations sometimes, with body pains, injuries, and sickness. When these things happen, the pain and suffering is normal and natural, and it's okay to acknowledge your difficulty. You're not the only one who suffers such. I am here with you, and we'll go through all this together. I feel the flow of gentle energy between my hands and heart. I imagine someone kind and compassionate who loves me deeply might say or do. This enables me to connect with the wise part inside that can offer some tender and loving care to the part of me that is hurting. Often that part is my younger self. So the basic elements of this practice, which hopefully you will get a chance to do soon, is first to make physical and emotional contact with your hands on your chest. Acknowledge the suffering, normalize rather than judge the pain, connect with the breath and heart, and then commit to remaining present with yourself through the difficulty and not abandoning yourself. All too often, we've been abandoned or neglected by others in our past. We don't want to repeat that pain with ourselves. In staying with ourselves, including our suffering, we are affirming our value and our worth, that we are worthy of being paid attention to, if by no one else, at least by turning towards ourselves. So let's do an exercise together. Bring to mind some small or moderate difficulty you're experiencing now. It's important to start the practice and build the self-compassion muscles with smaller things. So lighter weights before tackling the things that may overwhelm us. Now, before you proceed further, just notice what happens to your energy, your body, and your physiology in simply bringing to mind your difficulty, whatever it may be, this pain, this suffering. How's your breathing? How's your sense of vitality and aliveness, the opening or closing of your chest, the posture and alignment of your spine, expansion, deflation, tightness, relaxation? Just allow and notice how it is before making any changes. And just for a fun experiment, try saying to yourself, I don't want to think about this difficulty. It only gets me depressed. And it's really not a big deal. So see what it's like to just try to ignore the pain or turn away from it. And notice the same markers in your body, the energy, breathing, sense of aliveness, posture, tightness. Does it feel any better to try and turn away or deny the pain? So just notice. And now let's try this basic self-compassion protocol as I outlined it. So you first bring your right hand flat near the center of your chest, near your heart, with the left hand flat on top of it, and simply acknowledge the difficulty, substituting your name and the situation using the template as demonstrated. And do it slowly and gently, no rush. Take your time to drop in and connect with the natural tenderness of your heart. So again, you speak to yourself in third person. Like, Kathy, this is a difficult situation for you. My heart is numb. I'm sorry. When unfortunately life involves these kinds of situations sometimes people face. And when these things happen, the suffering is normal and natural. It's okay to acknowledge this difficulty. You're not the only one who suffers such. And I'm here with you, and we'll go through this together. So just notice, how's it feel to practice the self-compassion? What's the effect you notice in your body, your breathing, your tension level, sense of openness or closeness? Um, so let's share a little bit here. You can either speak up or you could type into the chat. Bring some sadness. For me, tears are near to the surface. Uh-huh. Yeah. Do you feel softer or harder in your heart or more tender? Wanting to ignore the issue comes to suffering. What can you elaborate? What do you mean by it comes to the suffering? The tears make your heart softer. The suffering comes to the surface, yeah. Kathy, I just end up crying for myself. The body feels even worse. Nervous system is very synthesized and reacts to the increased acknowledgement of all suffering. It's heavy and difficult. Hmm. Would you be open to turning on your camera and working this together, Kathy? See if,
Sure.
thank you. Thank you for your courage. So you want to try it again or not? I mean, it's your choice. Yeah. So right hand on the heart, left hand on it, or you could experiment putting your left hand at the lower belly, whatever feels more connected, more grounding, more rooted. So how would you concisely name your difficulty, or if you is just the pain of disconnection from your heart, or feeling numb, or there's something else?
I have a lot of physical distress from a psychiatric drug withdrawal that has really done a number on me. I'm 15 months off and it's just quite hopeless.
Hmm. Hmm.
I
So
was
you have a
on,
bunch of physical pains in your body and
yeah.
aches. Uh-huh. Okay. And it's is that something that other people experience from, for as far as you know, from the doctors, or
The
the,
doctors have not been very helpful to me. There are other people online who go through this. I seem to have a pretty bad case of it. I was on a lot of medication for about 35 years, so
hmm,
I'm finally off at least.
yeah, okay. But it sounds like this is a known thing that can happen to people when they go off medications. They have these body pains. Yeah. Okay, so how about then, again, putting your hand on your chest and speaking to yourself in third person, like, Kathy, this is a difficult situation. Your body pains following the withdrawal and stopping the drugs is hard, and I'm sorry. And unfortunately, sometimes this can happen to people when they go off meds, they get these body aches and pains. And your pain and suffering is normal and natural. It's okay to acknowledge your difficulty. And you're not the only one who suffers like this. I'm here with you and we'll go through this together. Let's see if you can kind of, in your own words, in some version of this, say that silently or out loud.
Kathy, I'm sorry for what has happened to you. Um, Sometimes these difficult things happen in life, and it's normal to feel suffering and pain. And you're probably doing a lot better than you think. But I'm here with you, and we'll go through this together.
Yeah, perhaps one more time.
Kathy, I'm here with you. All that you're feeling and experiencing is normal. It's okay to acknowledge the suffering and the pain of it. You're not alone. I'm here with you. We'll go through it together.
Yeah. So what's it like now?
It's just sad. It's been really hard for a really long time, even before the drug withdrawal. It's been
Uh-huh.
just really hard. Really hard just to be alive is what it feels like.
Yeah. And it is sad. It is sad that we're going through this pain. Is your heart feeling numb now, or tender, or soft, or?
I I have so many physical symptoms that it's hard to really tell what my heart feels like. Like
Uh-huh.
I just feel sad and everything just kind of hurts.
Mhm. Yeah. It seems like there's more sensation though now, more aliveness. Would that be fair?
Maybe it's uncomfortable. Like it's
Hmm.
even good things. It's just a lot for the nervous system to handle after all that it's been through. So
Yeah. Is it okay to feel the sadness now?
it is. I mean, it it doesn't ever seem to get me anywhere feeling it. I've been sad for decades. So it feels a bit futile to continue feeling it, but I keep trying. That's what's happening.
Yeah, that is what's happening. Okay. I'm wondering what's happening to other people as you hear Kathy's situation. And are you able to stay present with her difficulty and her pain, her suffering, her sadness?
Yes, it took me back through my own journey.
Hmm.
I mean, I have a really fine-tuned nervous system. I feel everything. I made myself a promise I'd never turn it off. And when at midlife time, my systems, sensing systems collapsed under the tension and pressure of that. And they wanted to put me on psychiatric drugs. And basically were saying there's nothing wrong, you just need these drugs. And I said, no. I said, I am so physiologically sensitive. I cannot eat sugar. I cannot drink a glass of wine. I cannot take in concentrated substances without whacking out my physiology. I'm not willing to do that.
You sound like you're very empathic.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what are you feeling in your chest right now, Nancy, as you kind of speak and relate to Kathy?
Well, so my answer to that has been so that I can be in my chest and in my body. And this is something I've been exploring recently, actually. So instead of going into the organs where the emotions can be really big, I go into my bones. So I've been doing some very interesting things. So when you said to put the hands on the chest, I was connecting to my sternum.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because the bones are the deepest part of us and the densest part of us. And so it's like an anchoring and a grounding because they move more slowly than the energies do. So it slows the process down so that it's not so overwhelming when something you don't have control over.
Yeah, and it's the solid part of us. Uh-huh. Kathy, I'm wondering what it's like for you to receive the feedback and the impact you're having. If you want to speak with the camera off or stay off or type in the chat, whatever feels.
It's nice. I appreciate it. I feel a little less alone, and I feel heard.
Mhm,
Part of what is difficult for me is I don't really have anyone very helpful in my life, like in real life.
mhm.
So it does help to hear some kindness from strangers. I'm trying to take it in. I have trouble feeling anything but this awfulness. Like I have trouble feeling the good stuff, but
Mhm.
I'm trying to take it in. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you are feeling some kindness coming towards you, which is so it seems like just your suffering and your difficulty has spontaneously brought up kindness in others. Yeah. John, I saw you type something. Is there something you want to share?
Yeah, the feeling that came to me was just a sense of wishing that somewhere there was a source of joy that could somehow not not diminish the pain, but have a joy or a spark of goodness, and can see the core of goodness in Kathy and all the others, and wishing there was a way to connect to some source of that joy and
Mhm.
that other dimension on the opposite end of pain and suffering.
Yeah, so some part of you has the impulse to want Kathy to find some joy besides the sadness.
Yeah,
Mhm. Where does that impulse, that desire for her arise? Can you feel that impulse, that desire?
yeah, it's coming from deep in my gut, actually.
Uh-huh. Okay, and what's it like for you when you stay with that place and that source?
Um, a, a little bit frustrated that the feelings there, but don't know how to actually have the effect or to.
Which feeling? You're frustrated that Kathy is
No, I'm frustrated with the fact that I wish for something that I don't know how to make happen.
I see, that's outside your control. Uh-huh. But that sounds like a secondary feeling beyond, on top of the motivation to just alleviate Kathy's suffering. What can you just stay with that impulse to want Kathy to have some joy?
Yeah,
So what is that like? Just that desire for her to.
it's like a longing or that um, that caring sense.
Uh-huh. Okay, and where is that caring sense in you? What's it like when you just stay with the caring sense before you go and, well, I can't control it, or I can't
Yeah,
make.
um, yeah. It's a there's a feeling of inner energy that
Uh-huh,
that's an impulse to
uh-huh.
um,
And is that impulse in the chest or the gut or where?
both.
Uh-huh. And is that energy pleasant or unpleasant?
Um, Overall, it's pleasant,
Okay.
um, but there's a longing sense to it. It's the
Uh-huh. And what's the longing like?
um, that's feeling like something's there that has the potential to
Mhm.
do something, and wanting that to come to be.
Yeah, so what is that like though? Is it like push or a pull or tenderness or
Well,
reaching?
certainly a tenderness and 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 a sense that somehow, some way, there's something there that's possible.
Okay.
a hope, maybe.
Mhm. Okay, so there's tenderness, there's energy, and it's in a way pleasant. Yeah. So the very wish for Kathy to not suffer brings up this tenderness in you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Kathy, anything else happening with you now as you hear John wanting to help?
I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words. It's a bit frustrating for me too, because I often hear people say things like that to me, that they wish they could help.
Mhm.
And it's painful to not be able to receive, what is being offered. And it makes, I often feel like, there's just something wrong with me, but then I just try and remember this will likely improve as I am
Mhm.
further
Yeah.
along off the drugs, but it's hard to believe that when I'm in it.
Mhm. So sometimes you go into judgment, but it sounds like you appreciate just the very kindness, even though people can't change your situation, the fact of their care is meaningful.
Yes, very much.
Okay, so I mean, I'm trying to highlight here the fact that sometimes just our caring presence without being able to fix the problem for someone, just that impulse, that energy, that open-heartedness, that tenderness helps someone feel less alone. And that in itself has a benefit, even when we can't do anything to quote unquote fix their problem. I mean, John, you said you're helpless to change Kathy, but your very care and wish for her has an effect, has a positive effect.
I hope so. Yeah.
Well, it sounded like it here. Because one of the difficulties we have with our suffering is we think we're alone and nobody cares. And then it's a double whammy. Did you want to say something, Kathy?
Yeah, I know this is mistaken thinking, but I tend to equate the fact that nobody can help me with the idea that nobody cares. And I just make it worse for myself by believing that, but I do often hear that line in my mind, like nobody cares. If they could care, if they did care, they'd figure out a way to help me, and life
Yeah.
doesn't care about me, like et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, okay. So you go kind of into that mindset. So as you look around in the gallery view, perhaps, what do you see? Just check it out. Do you see people caring or not caring or?
No, I definitely see caring, in the things that are typed, and when the people who spoke, I definitely see it. For some reason, I'm just so resistant to it,
Mhm.
but I do see it for sure.
So you could see and feel people's care here. But you have an old tape that says, oh, if they've cared, they would really help or fix my problem. So some part of you has a hard time taking that in. Yeah, so there's so many layers of that they need to be unwound, and compassion is some part of you has difficulty in that taking in the care, and that deserves of compassion. So you have so many layers. You have the layer of physical pain, the layer of, you know, I don't know how to change, or the layer of even if people care, they can't help me. So maybe that means they don't care. So see someone typing, I feel so much care, Kathy. I wish it was easier to find an answer. I also went a while not feeling like doctors or anyone could help me. Yeah. So this is part of our shared humanity. We go through these challenging, suffering moments. Well, we're a bit off script today, but I'm glad we are. So we can break into dyads and do the exercise as we envision, but I'm thinking that perhaps we'll just do it here in the large group with Kathy, perhaps. So can people relate in some way, even if it's not exactly your experience of Kathy, where sometimes you were in pain or you felt some hopeless or despair and that people couldn't help you? Is there part of you that can somehow connect with a similar experience to what Kathy has described? I mean, I've seen here a few mention that yeah, Nancy.
I want to go back to that thread about longing, because that was really important for my own recovery. And this is something that's really deeply felt. What do I say, as a woman living in a patriarchal society, that as a really creative person, I had lots of longings to do things and passions, but so frequently it was like, you can't do that. So it got all stuffed down. So that part of me was kind of annihilated. And I've turned it around because I finally realized that what I did in response to that was I was waiting for someone who wanted to do the longing I was feeling and support them, because maybe they'd get more support than I did. It was total craziness. I was working in healthcare, and where everything's in a box. You're not supposed to color outside the lines, and I'm a creative person, so it got me into trouble. So I had to find outside of work places where that creative part could find a space where that part of me was welcome, so it could come alive. Mm-hmm. And so what it turned into was, when I had some successes in listening to the longings and actually doing something, which always meant I had to crawl out of that box in a place where I was going to do it. I didn't really care what anybody said anymore. And
yeah, so it sounds like you felt some despair, but somehow you were managed to take some.
I moved myself through the despair because spark was missing. The spark of life itself, creativity, is a natural spark we all have. I actually turn out to be quite a non-binary person, because both my feminine and masculine parts are very active. I love working in systems thinking ways, and I like being creative. So I was always trying to tweak the rigidity of systems to make them more responsible and compassionate, so we could talk to each other and solve the problems, instead of pretending they weren't there.
Yeah, okay,
but
great.
What turned it around was the callings. Was one side. The flip side of calling, excuse me.
The longing,
What's the calling? When I heard a calling, maybe I'd say, oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that. But it was something I really, some place inside me just wanted to do it, and I didn't even know why. If I said yes, my whole body would light up. And I'd go, damn, I got to do this. Because when I say no to that, I'm in shutdown. So
yeah, okay, let's turn it back to Kathy here for a sec. So what,
yeah.
And just this idea of longing, I assume there's part of you, Kathy, that is longing for more joy in your life? Or less suffering?
Sure, that would be nice.
Yeah, okay. So you have that wish, that desire.
I do. Maybe this is an old tape as well. I feel like I'm in my own way, and so it's partly my fault that I can't get out of this.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but
So I, you know,
there is the longing. So can you take a breath and just feel the longing? Just the longing to have the suffering end, to be in a happier place, with less pain. Uh-huh. What's that longing, that wish feel like? What happens to your body and your energy when you just allow yourself to feel that wish, that longing?
there is a slight improvement in all of it.
Mhm. Okay, so your life force starts to come through. I mean, basically, that very wish to alleviate suffering, to be in a happier place, that longing is an expression of your life force, just kind of building on what Nancy was saying. So this is an important thing. It wasn't exactly, it's related to compassion, because compassion is the desire, the longing to alleviate our suffering. And I think when we connect to that, as opposed to the judgment, poor me, you know, then our life force can come through. But let's go back to what I was trying to see, is if in some way people can relate in some way to this time in your life where you felt hopeless or despair. And yeah, I see some nodding. So let's try and do this practice. It's called Tonglen, which is giving and receiving. So given you can relate to this time in your life where you have felt hopeless and despair and were in pain, and so imagine you in front of you, you at that time, you and Kathy in her state of despair. And Kathy, for you, you could just imagine yourself, an image of yourself, this part of you that's feeling sad and in pain and in despair in front of you. And if you know someone else who's in a similar situation, you can include them as well. So the idea is to have our image of ourselves and someone else that is suffering similarly. And it could be something we're experiencing now, and we could think of other people suffering similarly, or it's witnessing someone else's suffering, and we could find a part of us sometime in our past that suffered similarly. So we have an image of ourselves plus another in front of us. Both are suffering. And now on the inhale, imagine you're drawing in that suffering into your chest through the front. You can imagine it as dark gray smoke. And you bring it into the center of the chest, basically silently saying, breathing in, I open to acknowledge and receive this difficulty and pain. You slightly pause that there in the breath, and then breathing out, I send out kindness, compassion, and love. And you can visualize a golden light coming out from your chest. So you're inhaling in the suffering, yours and this other person, into your chest. And then you exhale out kindness, compassion, and love. So let's all practice this together. Breathing in, I open to acknowledge and receive this difficulty and pain. Might be this case, this despair, this hopelessness. And breathing out, I send out kindness, compassion, and love. Breathing in, I open to acknowledge and receive this despair, difficulty, and pain. Breathing out, I send out kindness, compassion, and love. So just continue in your own pace, silently. Breathing in, I open to acknowledge and receive this despair, difficulty, and pain. Breathing out, I send out kindness, compassion, and love. And on the exhale, you visualize a golden light emanating from the chest. So what's it like now? What's it like to do this? Anybody care to share?
I could share.
Please.
So I notice I feel more connected to you all and to Kathy. And I really appreciate what Peter put in the chat about not having an agenda to fix someone, because I don't feel that. I just feel a capacity to be with the pain and to be with you in that, not needing to make it different.
Yeah, and noticing your voice sounds very tender, Pauline. What's that like for you? Do you notice the quality of your voice? It's much softer and more tender.
Yeah, I feel a warmth and a softness, and also like a gravity of just this human condition and the difficulty of it.
Yeah. So there's a kind of a somberness to it. Yeah. Any other quality that you're aware of in the space right now? Just the overall field here. With some kind of silence or quietness.
I'm noticing a slowing down. And I'm remembering what Nancy Ann said about the bones and the slowness in the bones.
Mhm. Yeah. I feel some sense of sacredness. I don't know if anybody feels something like that. We're a bunch of human beings abiding in our shared humanity and the inevitable pain and suffering and the despair sometimes we feel. What's happening with you, Kathy?
I do feel a bit more of the space that, that holds it, like you were talking about in the meditation. One form of Tonglen that I've done is you breathe in the form, the suffering of it, and you breathe out the space that holds it.
Uh-huh.
And that does seem to help kind of spread it out rather than being like fixated in the denseness of the suffering. So there is some small relief there.
Uh-huh. How was it for you to just be aware that people were drawing in your suffering and the part of them that could identify, and then sending out kindness and compassion and love back?
That actually didn't even occur to me while I was doing it. I tend to get stuck in my own
Uh-huh.
stuff.
That was the instruction for you to focus on it, but I mean, just part of it was involved other people doing it with your particular.
I seem to have some kind of block when it comes to taking in the caring of others, like, even from my own mother. I, something is just stuck. I haven't been able to dislodge it.
Yeah, well, that's something to explore, perhaps with a good therapist. Anybody else care to share what it was like to do this breathing in and out, taking in suffering, breathing out kindness?
Yeah, what occurred for me was a recognition of my tendency to just want to ignore whatever's difficulty and suffering and
Uh-huh.
pretend it isn't there or wish it wasn't there, but not actually sense it and and open to it as a reality. And
Mhm.
that leads to just leaving it open and breathing it out, began to get a sense of, yeah, it's there, but I don't have to be captivated by it. But it's just a realization of one of the mechanisms that I've used that doesn't work very well.
Uh-huh. So became aware of your pattern. And how's your chest feeling at the end of it or now?
It's it's more calm and maybe more understanding of the situation and saying, well, now I see that I can
Mhm.
look beyond it.
So does it feel tighter or more relaxed?
It feels looser and more open.
Mhm. Okay. So what's it like if you just pay attention to the looseness and openness of your chest now?
Uh, yeah, it feels good.
Mhm. Good, feels good. Uh-huh. Okay, so take a breath or two, feeling the goodness of that, and see if any other words come up. What kind of goodness would you say?
Well, probably a bit more connected to myself, interestingly enough.
Uh-huh. So
And
that feels good, connected to yourself. Uh-huh.
yeah, and realizing something that I think I've known but tried to avoid. And
Yeah. Do you feel calmer, more peaceful, more spacious, less?
um, more peaceful, but maybe there's something else there that's I'm not sure how to articulate, but I, I think I think I feel more connected to that inner part of the good inner part of me.
Uh-huh. Okay. So
Yeah,
interesting. You took in suffering, yours and others, and you connected to yourself and you connected to your inner goodness.
yeah.
Okay. And how is that now to acknowledge and name?
Say again.
What's it like now that you see and acknowledge and name that?
Um, feels like there's a new source of energy there. It's kind of that calm energy that came up earlier in the meditation of calm, but not calm, or energized, but not energized in the sense of woohoo, but
Yeah,
more energized in the sense of calm acceptance or calm appreciation for
yeah.
that.
Calm aliveness rather
Yeah,
than agitation as energy.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Kathy, what's happening for you as you hear John? He did this meditation, kind of drew in your suffering and something similar he might have experienced, and then he connected with his own goodness.
Yeah, I'm a little later, I guess. Just so I appreciate all of this very much. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's interesting that somehow when he turned and opened to your suffering and offered compassion through this practice, he opened up and feels better about himself. You're kind of smiling. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's something I can usually do. I can usually help others even in way, but then I end up with this anger that, I can't help myself, or I can't take in what the help that's offered, and I end up focusing on that. But yeah, it does feel good to try and offer kindness to others.
Yeah. So this is the alchemical process I was talking about, is we could take in the suffering and turn it into connection and warmth and goodness. And that is the Tonglen practice. So Peter, thanks for offering that link to the Lion Roar article on Tonglen. Nancy, what's going on with you? And how was this practice for you?
Well, I'm in listening mode. Interesting thing that I tend to do deep listening is just natural for me. And it really goes along with what I was saying with the bones. Then when we do internal listening, not to what's out here, but whatever we're sensing inside, it is the slower side of life. And it's like I get pulled out when I'm let myself look out and see what's moving out there. And I lose this connection. So it's like the mind has this strong connection to seeing what's out there. And the listening is what pulls us back into the sensations of the body. And the challenge is two-way directional conversation between them. There are so many somatic practices for listening. There's something out there that can work for anyone to break this, what we want to call it, addiction to having to see what's out there when we don't even need to know in the moment, when we're doing something where we need to be focused elsewhere. The attention deficit thing has become so global.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, when you think about it, when we come into this world as infant babies, all the goodies are outside of us. We need mother's breast milk. We need, mother's holding care or loving care. So we if we're uncomfortable and we need our diaper change, we have to cry to get the help from outside. So we naturally start to condition ourselves that all the goodies are outside of us. And if people aren't responsive, then we can learn that, they're not going to be trusted, or they don't come to help us.
Actually, what you said is actually not true.
Not true. Okay, please.
At birth, the baby is totally in mama's rhythms and the rhythm of the womb.
In the womb, but when we come out,
after birth is still there. The memory of that is what is guiding the early development. So those funny movements they're making, they're trying to go back and reclaim the experience of the womb. This is all embryology and pre and postnatal psychology. There's huge research on this. And I've been on that journey as part of my own healing, but it takes us back into those rhythms. So, example, if you go down to the ocean and you're quiet, because there may not be anything but nature there, perhaps, but and you start to attune to the sounds of the wave and the wind. Well, that's what baby is doing at birth, trying to find rhythms, because the cognitive brain does not come online and be activated until it takes its first breath and has to reattune its rhythms in order to connect to gravity. It's a whole journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And
Connection, that's why the earth connection is important, because that's where we find the gravity sense in our body and in our bones. Back to the bones.
yeah. No, that's a good thing to include, which is we need that tuning in through gravity, through the bones, and we come out of the womb where we're all taken care of, and the ocean waves. That's why I live by the ocean, is to experience exactly what you're talking about. And that's why in the meditation I was highlighting the gravitational pull of the earth that draws us in like a mother's embrace. But yeah. Anyway, so we I'm sure we can discuss that for a long time. My only point is that, you know, at that young age, we are dependent on the outside sources, whether it's the breast or the what have you. And then as we go older and we're taking more responsibility, we're tuning in, like you're saying, with listening and tuning into our bones, and then that feels good to be in that open, receptive state.
Yeah, the instincts are what's important, and a lot of that is getting lost today because people think it's an animal thing, and it's actually a brilliant thing that connects us to the whole of genetics that's at our very foundation.
Yeah, well, it's our life force, and yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in it to sustain and promote life as social beings. Okay, anybody else? Katie, welcome to our meeting. We're kind of off script a little bit, but we've been practicing self-compassion and also compassion for others through drawing in, receiving pain and suffering, and exhaling out kindness and care.
Sharing, yeah, what's been unfolding here.
Please.
Yeah, so the question that, is there a question?
No, we were reflecting on this practice of inhaling suffering, ours and others, and then exhaling out kindness and care.
Mm.
Is there something in your life right now that needs some compassion towards yourself?
I would say so.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
You're welcome to share more or not if you care to, and see how the group receives it. And everybody, you can practice compassion towards Katie if she shares something that's weighing on her now. To see what it's like to inhale in any of her difficulty and exhale out kindness.
Yeah, it's an interesting process. Just from I took a breath or two there. And I could sense as I'm inhaling the suffering, almost ease with this, like a familiarity. And when I exhaled, it was more of like the suffering was kind of clinging. It kind of clings on. Self-compassion is not as easeful. That's my noticing.
Okay. And would you care to say something more specific about what is the trouble or the difficulty, or you want to keep it? You can keep it sort of general.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, that I did have a thought come to mind. Is this being recorded? It is, right?
It is.
Okay, for public use, then I would imagine so.
For people who registered, and yeah, so if there's something confidential you don't want to share, then that's a good thing to
keep in mind. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. Yeah. I feel like this suffering, this notion of suffering, is what comes to my mind, is incarnations. And so this incarnation, and the like coming to acceptance of suffering for this incarnation, and the interconnection of like ancestral suffering as well. I'm Indigenous from Canada, and right, that in its own is very heavy. And so I've just been, reflecting lately. I'm doing some personal work, going deeper into my shadow, if you will, at the moment, and really just coming to trying to come to acceptance of what my spirit chose for this incarnation. And sometimes it's like, this is very overwhelming, and yet like having to trust. And I'll just finish by saying, like, a thought that I had, an awareness that I had recently, was this big fear of persecution. So persecution, to my understanding, is oppression. It's oppression with no voice, no justice. And having like faith that at some point in some time there will be a balance of energies. But I noticed that fear a lot in myself. And I questioned, I'm like, okay, was this past? Like, where does this come from? Is this the consciousness of this planet? Like, what's going on here? So yeah, I appreciate your everyone's presence as I share. Those are the thoughts that kind of come to my mind at the moment.
Yeah, but it sounds like you might involve some transgenerational trauma. I mean, being Indigenous from Canada, I mean, your ancestors have suffered persecution. I know that is the case in my family. We're refugees and so on. And I know recently that has come up for me. So, trauma can pass, up to 7 generations. As experiments show, even in mice that were not in contact, or their parents were not in contact, they will exhibit the same symptoms 7 generations later without any conscious memory. How it's transmitted, we don't know. So yeah, we can experience things that seem mysterious. That has to do with what our ancestors experienced.
Absolutely. Mhm. I think the question, if I may ask a question in response,
Please.
is just with such injustice, how to come to resolve. Like I've traveled a bit and I find resolve in Hinduism or Mahayana Buddhism. The but it's on some, I have to be honest, like I do have an ego,
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. Keeping me alive.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. And that ego does wonder, like, okay, where is the resolve in it? Like, how do you make peace with injustice?
Well, I mean, how do you make peace with injustice? It's a good question. I mean, you do and you don't, at least the way I look at it. It's a fact of life and it's painful. And peace is not passivity. I think part of the way what we do is work towards greater justice and maintaining some faith that the arc of history works towards justice, as Martin Luther King said. It may be long and arduous, but I guess the question is, what is that injustice calling forth in you?
Mm-hmm.
Is it calling forth anything?
Beautiful question. I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And it's I think what it calls forth also requires the right watering, the right soil, and the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so it requires some self-care and requires some activism. It requires some taking responsibility, requires developing resilience. I'm just throwing some things that come up for me. So that's the yin and the yang, right? We accept it as a fact of life, and then we see it as a calling to develop certain capacities. So that takes us from being victims of it that are disempowered to active agents. That doesn't mean it's pleasant. It's still suffering. And then the other piece then would be self-compassion and compassion for all those that are suffering injustice, which then connects us into our shared humanity.
Can I is there time and space to bring forward a question?
Yeah, if it's quick, I think we do need to wrap up here in a sec.
Definitely. I think what I felt into recently was this just this not feeling. Okay, let's see. If you think of slavery, and if you think of like what happened with colonization, if I think of indigenous people, there was what occurred was less than other races, animalistic, savage, if you will, very hurtful. And I think, I felt into the resonance of this, and really was honest with this consciousness that was once very pervasive. And I'm just curious, like how to come towards this with the self-compassionate lens, how to hold this one, kind of like where I'm going with that.
Yeah, well, that's what we try to practice earlier. So you might want to watch the recording. I think, unfortunately, it would take too long, but just to acknowledge your difficulty with this, and this is huge, and like kind of like Kathy, you're suffering this transgenerational trauma and oppression and slavery and injustice in this world, and it's a lot of heavy weight to carry, and you're not alone, and many others suffer similarly, and this is sometimes part of life, and I'm here with you, and we'll go through this together. So you talk to yourself with that in third person. So you offer that compassion to yourself, like a good friend would. Instead of judging yourself as weak or whatever, you bring tender, kind care towards yourself, towards your heart. And it's a journey. Anyway, thanks for joining us and asking these deep questions that call forth our compassion. That's why we need compassion. So, towards ourselves and anybody else. So what's happening? Give me a few words just in hearing. Yeah, just any in hearing my response to your big question.
Yeah, I would say there's curiosity, I'm feeling a bit of anxiety, and also I would say going back to the curiosity. Yeah.
Okay. Well, curiosity is a good thing, huh?
And gratitude, sincere gratitude.
Okay, good. So curiosity, anxiety, and gratitude. It's an interesting cocktail, but it sounds like you have a capacity that is aware of all of them and can include all of them. You didn't just focus on the anxiety or on the curiosity. So that's a beautiful capacity to hold a lot in your awareness. So I just appreciate that. And so anyway, we are running over, and so thank you all for hanging in. And it's a big topic. We're just scratching the surface. There is a lot of suffering personally, individually, collectively. And so our next gathering is on September 20th. And will be on centeredness. So it's coming home to our center, and when we're in center, we can move in any direction. And our center ideally is our home. And we can get lost, but we want to find our way back home quickly to our center. Find our grounded resource there, our comfort. So anyway, thank you all. And I feel tenderized by our sharing. And thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your care.
Thank you for creating this space.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks. Bye.